And I've just been struck by the thought. I hadn't actually prepared this thought, but it struck me really as I was listening to everyone speaking that it's game on. It's game on. Either you're going to change the world, or it's going to change you. And it comes down to that. And my talk today is about fitting in. It's about you in the world. It's too late for me, save yourself. But it is about fitting in. How are you going to fit into the grown-up world we've just heard tweeted there? So, square watermelons are fun. There are ways to fit into the world, and one way is to just conform and to fit neatly. They pack very nicely on a shelf, so I'm told. The Japanese have invented them. Square watermelons are amusing, but square people aren't. These probably don't look like very square people, these naked Greek dudes. But this is actually Procrustes, the guy with the axe, and he's a person in Greek myth who would invite travellers in to sleep on his bed. Why don't you sleep on my bed? A nice guy. But then if you weren't big enough for the bed, he would stretch you to the size of the bed, and if you were too big for the bed, he'd chop your limbs off with an axe. So this is not good conformity. This is making you fit a certain shape. Well, what's this got to do with me and with you, and how can I possibly help as an old guy? Well, one thing I am is a professor of law, and that's two dangerous things combined. Possibly many more, but the two I can think of, the law, which is about regulation, it's about rights and right angles. This, by the way, is a law. I'm not allowed out of this red rectangle, you know. This is a right-angled rectangle, as all rectangles are. But it's a rectangle created by rules. Rules are straight things, aren't they? Now, I'm not allowed out. There are lots of rules in the TEDx experience, and they're called the TED Commandments, the big ones. There's some little rules as well, but one of the TED Commandments is you're not allowed to advertise stuff. So I'm not allowed to talk about my latest book, so I won't. But it did make me think, what if I started to talk about my latest book? They'd have to drag me out of the rectangle. So you see, rules don't really work, do they? Something's going to have to give. Anyway, so I'm a professor of law, and I represent two dangers. One of them is the law, which wants to regulate and make things straight. The other is education. Now, you might not think that's too dangerous, but let's look at the dangers of education. And as I said at the beginning, I'm here to warn you. How much education begins with an induction day? Well, education means to exducare. It means to lead you out of the duct. An induction day means to put you in the duct. That's a pretty scary thought, that the very first day of your education is to put you in the duct. When really you should be trying to get out of it. It should be broadening your mind. So that's why we hear of little boxes, you might know the song, or just being another brick in the wall. Some people, artistic people, creative people, have seen that one of the risks of education is it puts you in the duct, in the box, makes you square. What about rules? What about the law side of things? The danger of rules is that the rules will just make you square as well. I don't mean square boring, I just mean square conforming. Okay, well, rules are just tools for making squares. Now, does any of this really matter? Are there any risks here? Well, yes, be afraid. Be very afraid. I don't mean you have to be afraid of Tony Blair, but he's just the first name up there. What do Tony Blair, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama have in common? I know what you're thinking, yes, lots of things. But actually one thing is that they're all lawyers. They're all lawyers. In fact, Barack Obama is very much like me. He's probably saying the same thing somewhere right now. Barack Obama was a law professor. I can't believe it. And I'm sure that he would warn you exactly what I'm saying now, which is watch out that if you live a life according to strict rights and strict rules, and actually think that the whole world is going to conform to very simplistic and straight lines, you're in for a nasty surprise. What about the percentage of professionally qualified UK MPs who are lawyers? Any guess?
80%.
80%, now that's ruined my talk. It's nowhere near 80%. That would be, maybe next year it will be. And that would be frightening. I think it's frightening enough that it's 30%. Okay? 30% of, now you're thinking, no, I don't feel about 80% is scary, but 30%. That means really 1/3 of Parliament that's professionally qualified is qualified as a lawyer. And many more perhaps have law degrees, we don't know. The point is, this can be dangerous because let's think about the MP's expenses scandal. Now, many of the MPs in their defence said, I was just following the rules. And that sort of reasoning perhaps appeals to people that make laws, all MPs make laws, and perhaps it appeals especially to people that think like lawyers. I was following the rules, how can you blame me? Actually, what I'm here to tell you today is that you have to think outside the box. Now, that's a real cliche. Actually, I'm the one person who's not allowed to think outside this box. Okay, you've got to think outside the box. You've actually got to think outside of rights and right angles. And those MPs weren't doing the right thing when they said, I was following the rules. It was my right, it was my entitlement. You've got to think bigger than rights and rules. There's too much thinking rights. There's not enough right thinking. What about these two examples here? A negligent banker brings a bank to ruin. I mean, obviously I've just made that example up. That would never happen. But still claims the contractual right to a big bumper private pension. Is it right? Now, it is their legal right. But is it right? What about the example of the hospital that you can see it there? Hospital carries out an operation to save a patient's life on Tuesday, and on a Wednesday, a worker in that hospital accidentally spills hot tea on the patient. Your life is saved Tuesday by the hospital. The next day, you have hot tea spilled on you. Do you sue the hospital? It's your right. But is it right? Put yourself in that position. It's not an easy one to answer. It actually happened to a friend of mine. Exactly those facts. He was in hospital to have a brain tumour removed, and the next day, a well-meaning person working in the hospital, not a nurse it must be said, but passed my friend a cup of boiling tea. And he had no adequate motor control, and so it spilled. He has a nasty scar to this day. He didn't sue the hospital. He's a very philosophical chap. But actually, this is about philosophy. Someone earlier today has already mentioned Aristotle, and maybe that's where I'd like to go. We're heading towards a philosophical outlook, an ethical outlook in particular. So, what would we do? That's really the question of ethics. What would we do in any of these situations? What would I do? Well, that remains to be seen. But I think we will all face these kinds of challenges. One that I face is this one. Students asking for me to make decisions. And it's really quite difficult when you have to make lots of decisions and try to be fair to lots of students. It's sometimes quite hard. You find yourself not necessarily in what you call a classical Greek dilemma where there's no right answer, but sometimes in a tricky situation where you're not sure what is the right thing to do. And that's where it's really helpful to think beyond rules and strict formal approaches. So what about this example? What would you do here? A student asked to transfer into the second year of a popular course. The student's completed the first year of a similar course, but they haven't done the one really quite difficult and unpopular module that's in the first year of the course. So what they're basically saying is, let me join in the second year. I haven't done that rather boring and difficult thing in the first year. Now, can you bend the rule and let them in the second year? Would it be fair to the other students? Let's just imagine the sort of debate. You've got, on the one side, lawyers do this, they sort of imagine debates and then try and get you to join in. Okay? Imagine the debate. On the one side, you've got the students that have been through the first year saying, you can't let them into the second year. We had to do the whole first year, including that horrible module. Now, I know that they've done a good first year in another degree course, but they didn't do the horrible module. You can't let them in. On the other side, the student turns up and says, well, I'd like to join in the second year because it's only just occurred to me that I'd really love to join the course. You have got space in the course. I am a good student and I've shown that I've worked hard. True, I haven't done that one module in the first year. But the students that did do it, they're guaranteed to go in the second year. I'm taking a risk. I have to hope that you'll let me. So none of those will have done what I have done. Otherwise, I might have missed out on the degree course. So that's the sort of situation that I get on a daily basis. And how are you going to be fair? The rule is clear. You don't do the module, you don't go in the course. You don't get into the second year. But maybe some rules should be bent. Maybe no strict rule works perfectly well. So here's a question. Are you ready to get curvy? The thing is, we all want the world to accommodate us, don't we? That's something, we feel uncomfortable when the world makes us squashed. We like the world to accommodate us so that our shape can fit in. But if that's the way we want the world to be for us, what are we doing to make the world less square for other people? Do we insist that the world should be strict, that the rules should be applied absolutely straight? Well, if you do that, you're going to end up with a strict, straight world. You're going to be like the MP that says, I can have my expenses because it's my strict right. Forget the bigger rights and wrongs. What about Aristotle then? Aristotle, what a dude. Okay? Not perfect by any means. If you read about him, you find there's bits you're not going to approve of. Okay? I'm not going to say which bits, but pretty cool stuff. And Aristotle said, there's nothing better than being an architect. You know, we all understand that, and you know, this is the bit that gets me into the technology part of the TED title, okay, and design, okay, the architecture. Aristotle said, listen, we all understand the need to build stable societies, and you need straight lines for that. We don't make wobbly houses, okay? And we need rules that are straight, but there is another way. Life is not straight. Our environment is not straight. People are not straight. And if you put a straight rule against a curvy person or a curvy life, there's going to be a gap. And that's the justice gap, the gap between the rule and the reality. So what did he say? Let's build like they build on the island of Lesbos. Now, the island of Lesbos, they have a lead rule, a curvy rule. And they look at the side of the mountain, if you can imagine a Greek island, and you take your lead rule and you put it on the side of the mountain, you take it away, and you've got the curve of the hill, just there. You then cut your stone, your law, to the shape of life. And then you put your stone on the mountain, it's a perfect fit without anyone having to suffer. In other words, you don't fit life to the law, you fit the law to life. But Aristotle wasn't writing a book of law. That was from his book of ethics, which, this is the message for the youth, he wrote for his son. Well, he didn't even write it, really, because they didn't do stuff like that, you know, just kind of sitting about, really, and chilling. And Aristotle was going for a walk on his little patio, and probably, you know, with his son or, you know, with his students, and saying, this is the advice I give my son. I say to my son, don't insist on strict rules. Don't insist. You've got to make. You've got to, if you want life to accommodate you, you've got to accommodate life. It's the same with laws. So that's Aristotle's flexible rule. Now, how are you going to fit in then? How are you going to fit in? Remember, it's you against me. Okay? I'm the old one. I'm the law. I'm the teacher. I'm going to make you a brick in the wall. I'm going to put you in a box. Okay? Not really. That's not. Yeah. Boy, this is damning evidence if anything like that. Okay? My point is, you know, metaphorically, how are you going to win this battle? Okay? Either you change the world or the world changes you. So, how are you going to do it? Don't make it a square world to begin with. Don't fight for the right. Let it go.